No nanny lasted more than 2 weeks in that house. I walked in pregnant, a thrifted sweatshirt pulled over a name tag that said June, and the kind of calm people confuse with weakness. The Harrington place sat on a hill like a museum with a mortgage lemon polish in the air, long hallways that made even your thoughts echo, and right away the head housekeeper, Ms. Baines, handed me a laminated schedule, like a warning label, and said, "Don't disturb Mr. Harrington. Don't give the boys ideas." And I smiled. Because boys already come with ideas, you know what I mean? They told me the story in polite whispers: billionaire widower, 2 5-year-old sons who burned through caregivers like matches, a house that forgot how to be a home. And when I met the twins, it wasn't badness I saw. It was retreat. Max lined up toy cars by color like order was a life raft. Theo stared out the window like the sycamore would tell him something truer than adults do. So I didn't start with rules or charts. I sat on the rug, put my back to the couch, opened a picture book, and when a page stuck, I pretended to need help. 30 seconds of quiet is a lifetime in a room like that. Then a small hand slipped in, freed. The page disappeared, and I exhaled like a fisherman who just felt the first nudge on the line. We did everything slow, and with our hands folding shirts badly, and calling it practice, sweeping the hallway with brooms too big for them, and calling it teamwork, cracking eggs with both hands, then fishing shells with a spoon, because a kid doesn't need a lecture when you can hand them a solution. And when Max kicked over juice, I didn't scold. I asked where the mop lives, and we cleaned it like pirates who survived a wave. Dignity, not protocol. Ms. Baines looked ready to write me up for smiling on duty, but the boys watched the way you watch weather, cautious, curious, hopeful. Cole Harrington, the man of the house, didn't enter a room like a billionaire. He entered like someone who didn't trust floors to hold jacket over his shoulder, eyes that read fine print on people. "You must be Ms. Parker," he said. "June is fine," I answered, and he gave the kind of nod men give when they're doing math. "You can't see if this becomes too much. HR will arrange a replacement," he said. Like he was reading a menu with respect, I said, "HR doesn't know your sons," and for a second his face forgot what to do with itself. Then he looked down at my belly, a beat too long. People do that. They stare at pregnancy like thunder, measuring if it's coming their way. There were headwinds. Of course, there were Ms. Baines, who worshipped the manual and frowned when laughter showed up early, and Victor Hale, the CFO, who treated feelings like bad debt. He cornered me in the driveway, wearing a tie that looked angry. "This household requires a standard you may not be familiar with," he said. "Which is rich, coming from someone who has never wrestled a tantrum and a grocery cart. At the same time, people like you pass through," he added, and gestured at my belly. Like it was a liability. "She complicates matters," and I should have smiled and walked away. But my daughter kicked like she was voting. "Actually, she simplifies everything." I told him, "She reminds me what matters." Yeah, that happened. We kept moving, doing small things that stitch a day together. Paper boats on rainy glass towers meant to fall, dolls with terrible jokes, and laughter came back to the house like a stray cat. Suspicious at first, then, one afternoon, it stayed. The turn didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived with sore ankles and too much kid energy. I should have folded linens, but I turned my body into a canvas instead. Only markers, and only on my shirt. I told them, and their eyes went big like I'd handed them sparklers, circles with legs, a cat that looked like a toaster. We laughed and kept going. Then Theo pulled a cap with his teeth like an outlaw, and Max, tongue out for concentration, started writing across the round of my belly, slow and careful, like each letter weighed a pound. SIST. He sat back like he'd built a bridge and wasn't sure it would hold for her, he whispered. "So she isn't alone," Theo added, and that's when Cole walked in with the face of a man who pretends he came for a document. and not the sound of his own sons. He saw color knees on the rug, the word in unsteady letters, and the soul does what it wants with a face. His cracked, not loud, not dramatic, just honest. He reached out, hovered, rested his palm over the word. My daughter kicked once a small drum underwater, and the boys shouted like explorers, she said. "Hi, Daddy's eyes are raining," Theo announced, and Cole laughed. Through it went to one knee. "Without theater, she's your sister," he told them. "You already know it." And that was the moment the house learned how to breathe again. The next morning, the world tried to put itself back in rows. Victor slid a folder across a desk, bigger than my first apartment. "We can increase your hourly and calibrate expectations," he said. "Which is CFO for, can you please love these kids with less evidence? We cannot have emotional entanglements." I told him if he wanted a mannequin, he could buy one. If he wanted a nanny, he had to let me be human. And before the argument could dress itself, Cole walked in, not looking at me, like he knew my dignity needed, that we're done here. "June stays as long as she wants optics," Victor warned. "Then let the optics learn how to see," Cole answered. Not angry, just decided. A week later, he drove us to the clinic himself. The boys held my hands because they couldn't agree who got which and when. The Doppler found that fast, steady rhythm, and the room filled with a heartbeat like a tiny marathon. They didn't consult or rehearse, they just turned to their father with their faces bright and said in sync, "She's already our sister." And you could watch a man step into his own frame. He put a hand on both their shoulders and knelt right there on the mint linoleum. "Yes," he said, voice worn soft. "She is." After that, the house changed in ways you can measure, and ways you can't. Sanitizer gave way to cinnamon on Tuesdays, stainless steel, wore crayon halos like it remembered childhood. Cole pretended to wander into blanket forts by accident, and got assigned dragon voices he was terrible at. He read at bedtime, stumbling sincere. The boys corrected him, like patient coaches, and we began collecting the kind of firsts no accountant can count. First time Max laughed without checking the room first time. Theo asked for help before anger first time. Cole said I was wrong and didn't choke on it. There was pushback, a photo of me asleep in the rocker with the baby on my chest, and Cole reaching in to lift her without waking me found the internet. The caption wrote its own rage, and strangers called me a climber, and him a hypocrite. And my daughter a headline. Victor texted a number with too many zeros, and said this makes it go away. I put the phone down and asked the only question that holds, do the boys feel safe? I checked the fort and found Max and Theo reading to the baby, like bookends, like guardians. "She likes dinosaurs better than dragons," Max announced. "She likes both," Theo corrected, and I sat in the doorway, where no one could see me, and decided what mattered. You want the win, I get it. The internet loves justice that tastes like dessert 2 months later. Cole walked into the kitchen with a paper that used to be a rulebook and said, "I rewrote the house rules, help, first correct second. If you break it, show how we fix it. Birthdays are federal holidays. Nobody eats alone. Ask questions. Even if your voice shakes, love is a verb, not a buzzword." The boys taped it to the fridge with dinosaur magnets like a constitution for the country we were building. And I laughed and cried at the same time because sometimes policy is just tenderness that learned how to write. And you also want the fight. Here's the debate. I still have a key to a door I don't own. I still get called temporary by people who have never outlasted a storm. Some nights Cole talks to the past out the window. And some mornings I wonder about boundaries, because power and paychecks make clean lines. Messy, you know what I mean. And then dinner burns, and we eat it anyway. The pond goes shh, like it's in on the secret. The baby burps like a champion, and we read the new house rules out loud like a prayer. Nothing cinematic happens, not one thing, and somehow it is everything. So I'll end where I live, on the rug under a fort, made of sheets that cost more than my first car, two boys, who used to hide, now calling themselves big brothers in chief. A man who used to measure love with silence, counting it out loud. Me, the girl folks looked past, sleeping less, and feeling more, and finally fully awake. Tell me what you think. Was I right to stay when money and gossip tried to buy my exit? Or should there be a hard line between care and family? When power sits at the table, is family about blood, or about who shows up and keeps showing up? Drop your story in the comments. What prejudice have you seen dressed up as policy? Who taught you that love is a verb? And if this hit somewhere true, like, subscribe, tell a friend, because there are more rooms to warm and more weather to change.